Welcome to today's Explainer. We're launching right into a full techie cut, a true deep dive analysis into a local mystery that's honestly going to leave you speechless. We're talking about a true story where a simple, loving gesture, a daughter handing her dad his morning drink, literally became a calculated and deadly weapon. It's wild. Okay, let's dive into this. Because to answer that chilling question, we need to look at the life of 45-year-old Janet Balawar. Janet was a head constable stationed at the Chandrapur City Police Station in Maharashtra. By all accounts, he was a dedicated guy who cared deeply for his family, especially his 19-year-old daughter Arya. But it makes you wonder, what happens when the very person you protect and love becomes the architect of your demise? How does a simple, everyday milkshake turn into an instrument of murder? Chapter 1. The Perfect Crime. Let's trace the fateful morning and the final hours of Jayant's life. It all started on the morning of April 25th, 2023. Jayant wakes up early, takes a bath, does his daily prayers, just totally normal routine stuff. But as he's getting ready to leave, he feels this strange, unexplainable unease, a real heaviness in his chest. Before he heads out the door, his daughter Arya, who's also up early, lovingly prepares and hands him a milkshake for breakfast. He drinks it down and heads off to his post at the Collectorate Administrative Building. But then, shortly after he gets there, he just suddenly collapses right to the ground. People scramble to help him, rushing him straight to the Government Medical College and Hospital in Chandrapur. But despite the doctors doing absolutely everything they could, Jayant tragically passed away. Just like that, a healthy man, gone. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying gap between what the authorities thought happened and the actual hidden truth. You see, the official postmortem report was done, standard procedure, right? And it explicitly cleared any foul play. The death was officially ruled natural, the family mourned, Arya, the grieving daughter, was absolutely devastated. Jayant was given his final farewell, and the book was closed on the case. But the hidden truth? That morning milkshake was laced with a lethal poison. Part 2. A shocking confession. And now we hit a massive time jump. 3 years later. Literally, for 3 whole years, the entire world believed Jayant Balawar died of natural causes. 3 years of Arya living her brand new life, collecting her father's benefits, securing a police job on compassionate grounds, and marrying her boyfriend, Ashish. But that closed case, it was about to be completely and utterly shattered. Out of nowhere, in March 2026, the silence breaks. Ashish, Arya's husband, walks right into the Ramnagar police station. And he doesn't just give some standard statement. He resurrects a 3-year-old lie. He confesses to the absolutely stunned officers that Jayant's death wasn't an accident. No sudden illness, he drops this bombshell. The milkshake was poisoned by Jayant's own daughter. The very hands that lovingly prepared breakfast for him were the exact same hands that ended his life. I mean, no way, right? Chapter 3. The Deadly Motive. Why would a 19-year-old orchestrate something so calculated against her own father? Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown of the conspirators is the sheer level of calculation involved. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment crime of passion, it was a deeply calculated conspiracy. Arya was the mastermind, while Ashish acted as the facilitator. They actually roped in Ashish's minor cousin, a kid, just 13 or 14 years old, to act as a connector over in Bhadravati. And that cousin found Monty, also known as Chaitanya, who was the poison supplier. 4 distinct people, forming this dark network to eliminate one unsuspecting father. Let's look at the exact mechanics of how they pulled this assassination off. Step 1. Ashish reaches out to that young cousin. Step 2. They pay exactly 5,000 rupees to Monty. But get this. They didn't just ask for any random poison. They specifically requested something that, once ingested, perfectly mimics the symptoms of a natural illness. They needed it to look like a sudden medical tragedy. And then step 3. Arya executes the plan, mixing that undetectable poison right into her dad's morning milkshake. Now, you might be asking yourself, how on earth did the initial autopsy miss a lethal poison? Well, the answer lies in early police negligence. While it's true some poisons are hard to spot, in this specific case, the visceral samples from Jayant's body just weren't properly collected or sent for timely forensic testing. It was a failure to follow strict evidence protocols. Because of that negligence, the poison traces were completely missed, and the conspirators literally walked free for years. Part 4. A Life of Facades. What happened next is deeply disturbing. So Arya didn't even move out of her maternal home where the crime happened. By October 2023, just months after the murder, her brazen activities really escalated. She creates an Instagram account, and in this incredibly twisted display, she actually adds her deceased father's name as her middle name. She's on there flaunting Maharashtra police tags in her bio, falsely calling herself a microbiologist. Completely free from her dad's strict rules, she travels, parties on the weekends with friends, and posts all these romantic videos with Ashish. The stark contrast between her public face as this carefree, grieving daughter and her private reality as a cold-blooded killer, it is absolutely chilling. So they had pulled it off. They had the money, the jobs, the freedom, and zero police suspicion. So what caused their perfect crime to crumble? The answer actually has nothing to do with brilliant detective work. It was all about the rapid, toxic deterioration of their own relationship. By late 2025, their paths took completely different directions, creating a highly volatile situation. Arya was thriving. She was nearing the successful completion of her police training. Ashish, on the other hand, his trajectory completely crashed. He was actually fired from his police duty during his probation period for indiscipline and misconduct. This dynamic shift changed everything. Ashish became incredibly frustrated and insecure, and Arya, well, she didn't need his help anymore. She felt superior, started treating him poorly, and frankly, saw him as a burden. The fights escalated, which was a massive blow to Ashish's ego as he watched her leave him in the dust. Chapter 5. The Psychology of Patricide. Let's look inside the dark mind to see how this all unraveled. Patricide is the act of killing one's own father. Usually we see this in extreme cases of long-term abuse or self-defense, but not here. Jayant was simply a strict parent. He noticed Arya's behavior changing, caught her with Ashish, and, knowing the dark realities of the world as a cop, he placed restrictions on her to keep her safe. But Arya was used to getting whatever she wanted. She didn't see a protective father, she saw a hurdle to her freedom. She saw a roadblock to getting that lucrative, compassionate ground job. So she made the calculated decision to simply eliminate him. So the crucial point here is this psychological concept, moral disengagement. How does a daughter mix poison into her own dad's drink and not just collapse from the guilt? It's through moral disengagement. It's a psychological process where a person intentionally justifies their unethical actions to themselves, completely stripping away their empathy. In her mind, Arya transformed her father from a loved one into a mere obstacle. And once that empathy is gone, as psychology tells us, the unthinkable becomes entirely possible. Her mindset was essentially a perfect recipe for tragedy. 3 psychological factors collided perfectly. First, unchecked desires, stemming from an upbringing of instant gratification. The second she finally faced a real boundary, she just couldn't handle it. Second, weak emotional regulation. Instead of solving a conflict maturely, she decided to literally eliminate the source of the conflict. And third, dangerous opportunity. Seeing Ashish get a compassionate ground job planted this dark idea in her head that her father's death would personally benefit her own career. But what about Ashish? Why did he confess after 3 years? Let me tell you, it was not out of some deep moral guilt. It was driven by a completely toxic psychology. If I go down, you go down with me. Ashish was dealing with a severe ego injury and a thirst for revenge. Once he realized Arya was successfully moving on with her police career while his own life was in ruins, he decided to take back control the only way he knew how, by destroying both of them. And his revenge absolutely brought the hammer down. Just 3 days after Arya proudly posted online about completing her police training, the timeline finally concludes. On March 28, 2026, Ramnagar police swept in. They arrested Arya, Ashish, Monty, the poison supplier, and detained the juvenile cousin. The 3-year facade was over and the masterminds were finally behind bars. Which leaves us with one final, deeply chilling question. How well do we truly know the people closest to us? Jayant Balawar spent his entire life protecting society from criminals, never realizing that the greatest danger he would ever face was sitting right across from him at his own breakfast table. It is a stark, terrifying reminder that sometimes the ultimate betrayal doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within our own homes. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.